So photopic is the light visual where our cones are mostly in use. And as we transition between the two systems, we start to have a harder time. So this is a widely documented issue. There's, I think most of the accidents are supposed to happen at dusk or dawn. Have you ever been in your car where it's kind of dusty out and you think your window is dirty? You know, you start to clean it. That's that sense where everything starts to get soft, monochromatic. It's hard to see contrast and things moving. So if you look at 14-foot lamberts, we're clearly in the photopic range. As we work down to 5-foot lamberts, which is the target for 3D, we're getting close to the line. At 3-foot lamberts, or at 50%, we're riding that line where we're starting to desaturate, we're starting to lose sharpness, we're starting to see things very differently. So to try and represent this, I shot this in my backyard, okay? When the first one came up, it was less than a foot lambert on the table. And you can see, this is just a representation. As we get more and more light, you'll begin to see color come out, you'll begin to see resolution, and everything happens. So what my point is on this is that when you have dark edges like that on 3D, 3D is this special environment where everything is potentially sharp, but how we're deploying this currently right now is we've got 3D in the center, but then on the edges, we're losing, none of that color affecting acuity and depth is there in many of the streets that stands today. Also, I wanted to mention, one of the other things that I found interesting on uniformity and curves on screens is there's kind of standard practice. If someone has a curve, it's a 1 on 20-foot kind of ratio. It's a 5% curve. It's the most standard in exhibition that people talk about. But one of the things I wanted to point out here was that based on throw, your angle to the edges changes. And based on the performance of your surface, it changes. So people say, or think when they have a curve, and give me that 1 in 25% curve, they think they're getting a standard curve across all their auditoriums. Not true. What happens is it's really a function of throw. The closer you are, the curve should be changing based on your auditorium. So, better or worse, let's get 3D light right, explore custom curves and some of the high-performance surfaces that Michael had shown and talked about earlier. The last and third tail I have is standard practice, which really stands standards versus reality. So this portion right here, 14-foot lamberts at center, is the theatrical DCI standard with 75% light on the edges compared to the center. You can see that in many cases we weren't there. Cynthia had a working group that Matt Cowan headed up that was really pretty interesting. What I found in times that I've done the different uniformity trying to test these light screens, it's very hard to be consistent at capturing the positions on the edges to catch the 9 points or 5 points that you really need to do. He suggested that you come up with a template like this. This way you can target these specific positions and be consistent, be comparing apples to apple. Thomas Baldridge, he's a gentleman that works as an engineer for me. He actually is getting ready to leave Harkness to go to work for Dolby. I think one of his last acts at Harkness was to create a template like this. So he's got a DCP that can set up targets with flatter scope so you can begin to take DCI readings properly. This is from a Harkness screen modeler, and the DCI spec for light measurement is to be where that yellow seat is. It's the center of the auditorium. Okay? But see where the X is? The real practical things, every tech that I've ever seen set up a digital cinema projector, he goes and sits in that place where the X is. And the reason is that's, I think, historically where they used to check audio. Maybe it's also a little closer to the port window. But it's one of those things that there's a little bit of a disconnect, at least in U.S. auditoriums that are shaped like this, that the practical DCI point where things are measured, the practical point where things are measured and the DCI point are a little bit different. I have a clip here that's running. This is taken, this is every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night show from November through December at a cinema to actually see where people are set. I took all the, anything that didn't have people, I removed those shows, but this is an active, quick look at where people really sit in the auditoriums. So my point here is the DCI spec is set up with one thing, where people are actually taking their readings, which is the center of that auditorium there, is actually a pretty good representation. Kind of interesting, huh? there's some new tools. There's some new tools that make some interesting things happen. So there's a company called Highland Technologies, Cine Active, I think is the US company that's representing it. It has these devices that give the ability to do 144 points of light and get a dynamic reading there. But just as importantly, when you're looking at an output like this, you're able to adjust your projector to make sure that your down angle is perfectly set for your scope picture, right? It also gives you the ability to see how well lit you are on your edges. And if there's an anomaly on screen sometimes where the edges have been tightened too much, and it's called a belly curve, where it comes out. This is one of the first tools that you can actually dynamically tell screen installations with a problem. So kind of a neat tool. Well, there you have it. My three tails of perspective. Aspect ratio. So the aspect ratio mismatch, you know, I think I've begun to understand. I hope you can see that scope has become the most important format for us, release format. So we want to make sure that that looks great. Better works better. We can make it better by making sure that the 3D light levels are right in the center and as it translates to the edge. Okay? For your auditoriums that really matter, take a look at coming up with custom curves to match, you know, your auditorium correctly, and take a look at these new high-performance surfaces. And everybody's got a lot of different choices, and you can really have some outstanding results. And standards reality, you know, the standards are there to help us get closer to, you know, what the filmmaker imagined. When I worked at Kodak, my last Kodak story, I was at Film Labs, I saw this happen. I would see distributors and the studios make some decisions to try and save some money and switch to cheaper film stocks as right in the middle of the project. They felt like this, you know, this is not going to be a successful film, right? So let's start saving all the money we can. In those days, when you would go to a screening, you would see a show print that was slow printed, okay? It was nothing like most of the theaters in the US would ever get. But today, with these new digital files, really the quality standard has been given, you know, has been translated actually to give it to the exhibitor, and it's up to them to make the most of it and help carry forward the vision of the filmmaker. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Michael and Keith. A lot of things to ponder and consider in your next construction project. Next presentation is How Black is Black in a High Dynamic Range Cinema. Be presented by Peter Leday, who for many years you know him from his Sony days, and also as past president of SIMPI, and now vice president with Real D. Peter.
Hi, thank you, Bill. Good afternoon. Great to be here, and I know that I'm the last thing between now and lunch, so I'm very familiar with that. Where's my time? Oh, there it is. Okay, so the topic today is regarding high dynamic range cinema. How black is black, or how black do you need to be? Now, for those of you that might have attended the HPA technology retreat in the desert a couple of months ago, I did a little preview of this talk and got some good feedback and got some other questions. And today I'll be amplifying on that and revealing some additional test data and analysis that we've been able to conduct since then. And I welcome feedback today too. So I'm going to start out by saying what problem is it that we're trying to solve, and Keith just did an outstanding job about explaining the differences between the various brightness levels of the human vision system. The problem is that current display technologies cannot emulate the range of light in the real world. And real world is shown there with sunlight on the right, with a measurement system of luminance in candelas per square meter, known as nits, down to very dim light. Now, the human visual system is able to see at the very low end of that using the scotopic, as Keith explained, rod functions and the very bright cone functions. But at any given point, there's that steady state human visual system. That means that your eyes accommodate to a certain range of brightness, and that's over the range of several orders of magnitude, 3,000 or 1,000 or 10,000 to 1. And that's the limit about before your iris has to change and your photochemical reactions need to change. The display technologies, on the other hand, can capture only a small piece. Today, the low dynamic range displays under steady state human visual system, high dynamic range go much higher. But what does high dynamic range exactly mean? Well, maybe that's a marketing question more than a technical one. One of the standards groups, ISO IEC, has come up with this representation of common usage. I don't think anybody says there's a right or wrong answer, but many people talk about standard dynamic range in a range of being 10 to 12 bit, which means maybe up to 16,000 to 1. Some people talk about an extended dynamic range, but when you really talk about high dynamic range, that might be in the range of 1,000,000 to 1, or 20 f-stops on a camera. So somewhere in there, and we'll leave it to the marketing and standards professionals to come out with what the actual term will mean when you go to a store and buy an HDR thing, but this gives you some idea of the range that we're talking about. Numbers aside, you know it when you see it. If you were to look at this real life, you would expect that sunlight coming through the trees to be much brighter than the white of the diffuse haze. And you would expect the fringes on those clouds to be very bright as they are in real life. And displays today just are not capable of showing that degree of variation on those bright highlights. There's also the fact about reflected lights called specular highlights. In real life, specular reflected highlights are much brighter than the diffuse light that you get off, say, a piece of paper. That's called Lambertian reflections, where light scatters in all directions. So for example, in this case, I have a billiard ball sitting on a white piece of paper. The piece of paper underneath represents diffuse light, which is kind of what we're used to seeing on the screen, but that little reflection of the light above should be much brighter. In movies, they're not. They're the same, and that's what distorts reality. Now, it doesn't help sometimes in the consumer electronics industry. I took this photo a couple of months ago at the CES conference right here in Las Vegas, and they're advertising HDR for, in this case, a camcorder. You can see there's an explanatory sign that says, exclusive high dynamic range reduces bright spots. I don't know exactly what that means, but I guess it's a good thing because they're bragging about it. And they also have this little box that I would love to buy, but I couldn't get a part number. It says HDR movie, push. If only it were so simple. I know some